So we're going to switch gears now. We've talked about two multinational companies and the challenges they face in penetrating into emerging markets. And what we're going to do now is look at an Indian company that is going global, Piramal Pharma Solutions. And we're delighted to have Vivek Sharma, CEO of Piramal Pharma Solutions, speaking to us about their story. Vivek, like Suren, trained as an accountant and then moved into private equity, took on some operational roles in companies like AMD and Motorola, and then did a stint in one of the other Piramal companies and turned it around. And what happens when you do that is that they give you a bigger problem to deal with or a bigger opportunity. So he moved on to Piramal Pharma Solutions. And the company now has a global footprint, and even though it started in India, it now operates on several continents. And the interesting thing about it is that they are not only engaged as partners in manufacturing, but also in R&D services. So here we get the chance to look at how you leverage emerging markets as a place from which to source products or services and to tap into the talent. And even though this came up with both of our previous speakers, I think the focus here is very much on the talent and the chance to offshore to these locations. So with that, I want to welcome Vivek Sharma. Thank you, Vivek.
Good morning. I'll be talking about India and then Piramal. So I have some slides on Asia, which I think we've heard a lot about Asia this morning. So I'll actually skip that in the interest of time. But as we all know, Asia is growing, has grown and growing, and a lot more potential, I think, for all of us. There's a lot of numbers, that we've talked about in the morning. We can discuss, debate, but huge opportunity from an overall global perspective, big contributor in the global economy, and we see that trend continue to evolve and continue to expand and grow. The outlook for growth is very positive. I think, we talked about, the first speaker talked about the China number, India GDP, if you really look at, at 7.7 or 7.8%, growth, is tremendous, and, the outlook for the next several years looks very positive. So it's all very positive. And what makes Asia an attractive destination? Again, some of the themes that were discussed in the morning, huge consumer base, huge growth potential, highly skilled, workforce, regional stability, at least for the last several years, and hopefully it continues, with everything else going on in the next few weeks, with some of the regional players. And, the consumer market is a big attractive for all the companies, globally. We talked about P&G, we talked about Thermo Fisher this morning, and other companies as well, right? So huge potential. Life sciences, this is what I'm going to focus on briefly. If you really look at from a life sciences perspective, while Asia is a big consumer, but it also contributes a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things that happens in Asia that has allowed to contribute in a big global spectrum from a life sciences perspective. So I'll focus a lot more on India, but India with this rich talent and, huge generic manufacturing capabilities, huge R&D capabilities, contributes in a big way. But at the same time, South Korea, we talked about South Korea this morning in terms of technology, but on biotech, they become a hub actually for a lot of innovation that is coming and a lot of work that is happening in South Korea. Japan, is actually the second largest pharma market after U.S., in the world, but has revisited its prescription plan and has opened the market for a big generic space. So we've seen significant growth in Japanese market from an overall, pharma perspective, allowing more generic companies to come in. China, big market. I think Saeed talked about, in the morning that, a huge focus on pharmaceutical. A lot of Chinese companies, internal consumption as well as exports they're looking at. And Philippines is also developing, applications and working on more technology that allows more pharma, consumers and companies to take advantage. So huge growth and huge evolution. Focusing on India, I mean, India has been involved into pharma for the last, more than 100+ years, and, it has grown. As the country has evolved, as the country has expanded, and as the more awareness and, has risen, and the talent is actually expanding in India, we've seen a huge growth in India over the last, century, in the Indian pharma market, especially with the patents, securities, the talent, foreign companies, going there, US FDA having its a huge office there, and, its controls and guidance there. So again, plays a key role in the global pharma market. Some of the highlights, we talked about this in the morning again. I mean, India contributes significant portion of the generic drugs, not just to US, but globally, The factories in India, provides branded generic, drugs to the companies. There's about, I think, different volumes, but about 30 to 40% of the generic drugs are actually made in India. India files for about 50% of the world's APIs, this is the active pharmaceutical ingredients. They call it DMFs, drug master files. So about 50% of the future drugs that will be made generics are filed out of India, right? So that's a big number. Indian companies have the largest, approval for the ANDAs, by the US FDA, which is again a sign of the potential growth that happens. And India has the largest number of US FDA approved facilities outside of US. So that tells you the potential, the contribution and the potential from a pharmaceutical perspective that India has. Now, if you really look at pharma, pharma is a complex business. I mean, every business is complex. Pharma is actually even more complex because the needs are changing. It's evolving. It's an essential commodity. Everybody needs pharma, with new therapies coming in, with new evolution, with new discoveries coming in. The complexity of making drugs is increasing. No company can do everything itself in pharma. All the companies you can think of, they have a need to do more than what they can themselves do for different reasons. The processes are very complex. The timeline to make a drug is actually very long. It's a very highly capital-intensive industry. It's an industry that thrives on collaboration. You need a lot of intelligence, a lot of know-how from different aspects, and that cannot reside in one place and one part of the company or one part of the region, right? So you need to leverage, and the consumers are all over. I mean, pharma companies targets, the patient population. So given all of that, and there's a huge need for outsourcing in pharma. Every single pharma company that you see has very similar initiatives. They want to work faster because there's this need to speed, get the product out to the market as soon as possible, so we can serve the patients, as much as we can and as soon as we can. Every single company has a need to optimize the cost. As you know, the pharma companies struggles with cost because it takes a huge amount and huge time to develop these drugs, right? Every single company, because of the way they have grown and how the industry has evolved, is sitting with a huge network of suppliers and plants. So if you look at Pfizer, Merck, GSK, Roche, Novartis, they all have like 75 to 120 plants all over the world. So the supply chain is very, very complex of making these drugs. What does that do? Whereas, as the models are evolving, they've realized that they need to focus on their strengths, which is more on R&D, more on innovative processes, rather than on doing everything themselves. Given all of that, we are seeing a huge trend in outsourcing pharma. And if you really look at pharma outsourcing, whichever lens you put, the numbers are actually going to grow and even going to expand. So it's a big market, about $100+ billion market, different parts of pharma. This is just the drug manufacturing piece. If we look at some of the other things that happen, it's even a bigger market. And the projections are it's going to grow because of all the complexities of the pharma companies, because of the changing environment, and because of the urgency to get things done faster and cheaper, So from a macro level, that overall industry will continue to expand, business will continue to grow, and that's where we come in. So Piramal is an India-based global organization. We've been in business for about 150 or so years. Healthcare started about 30 years ago. We have different businesses, and I'll talk about different businesses. We're one of the very unique global organizations that, we're in so many different businesses. But one thing that binds us all is this mission statement as to why do we exist. And this is actually very important for us. And it's an important story. I used to work in Boston in a private equity company, and when I joined actually because of this statement, because of this slide, that why am I working? The company was very clear that who they are, what they do, and then why do they exist. So we basically believe that we exist to do well and do good, and we do this by making a positive difference through our products, services, and our customer focus. The philosophy of the company is that whatever we do, we have to really improve either the quality of life, the relationship, or the value to our shareholders. We believe in serving people. We serve people, when we say serve people, we are here to serve customers, we are here to serve the investors, we are here to serve employees, partners, and key stakeholders. And the last and the most important thing is that we got to live the values that we talk about. So we can talk all the great stuff, but if we don't walk the talk, we are not really doing, what we say. And the values are defined as knowledge, action, care, and impact, where we believe that we got to keep getting better at what we do. So we believe we are good, but there's an opportunity for us to get better. We got to be very entrepreneurial and very, with high integrity. Focus on trusteeship and humility. It doesn't matter who we are acting as trustees of the organization, as the investors, as the customers who put their trust in us, as the trustees of the employees who are, empowering us to do things on their behalf. And lastly, whatever we do has to be measurable. So there has to be an impact, and that impact has to be measurable in terms of, what we are doing. So we put a lot of effort in the organization on these values. We believe that this is our core competency, our values. Our values drives growth. Our values attract talents. Our values attract investment from our investors. And we actually, use this slide in all our customer communication. I talk a lot with our customers. It makes a huge impact because customers can relate to it. What businesses we are in? So we're a public company out of India. We've been public for about 30 years, and we're in a lot of different businesses. Two main businesses that the public company focuses on is healthcare and financial services. Healthcare has 5 different components to it. So Pharma Solutions is the business that I run. We are a contract manufacturing organization where we are supporting pharma companies all over the world, including a lot of companies right here in Cambridge, area that are our customers. We have a critical care business. This is a business where we are one of the leading providers of critical care hospital products. When I joined from PE to this Piramal Group, this is the business I ran. We are the 3rd largest inhalation anesthesia maker in the world. About 40% of US hospitals uses a Piramal product. In Boston, MGH, and most of the hospitals uses a Piramal product. We have an India-centric consumer product business, not as large as P&G, but much smaller. We use a company called Decision Resources Group. This is a company owned 100% by Piramal. We have 1,000 highly skilled PhDs and scientists where we do data analytics on healthcare. So this is about market access, predictability, pricing. About 300 of them sit right here in Boston. And we are one of the largest financial services companies in India. So we are into different parts of financial services. We are in auto financing. We are in real estate financing. We are in housing, commercial financing. And if you look at the overall loan book of how much we have lent, we are in the top three financial services in India. So pretty, fast-growing business. We also have a glass business. We're one of the leading glass makers in the world with 2 plants in the US and Sri Lanka and India. More than 50% of the world's cosmetic glass is actually made by Piramal. A fast-growing real estate business, and something we're very proud of is our foundation. So talking about the values where we talk about the knowledge, action, care, and impact, we have a very large foundation that we are really proud of. There are about 4,000 people actually that are employed by foundation. It's fully run by the Piramal Group. We work in different parts of the society, helping and making impact in education, in healthcare, in women livelihood, and we are now bringing the foundation from India to other parts of the world where our businesses are, so that we can be more integrated with the different parts of society. Overall, we are about an $8.5 billion market cap company. We have invested more than $1.5 billion in just North America. We have about 1,500 or 1,800 people in North America. So it's decent sized presence, given coming from the Indian heritage. I'll focus more on the business that I run, the Pharma Solutions business, because given the topic of emerging, rise of Asia, the business that I run is a services business. We serve pharma companies by helping them get their product out faster, cheaper, and more efficiently and effectively. Our focus is to help companies, improve the quality of life of the patients that they care about. That's the reason why they are in the business. Help them reduce the burden of disease. Bring affordable medicines through our cost-effective and efficient, plants that we have across the world. Focus on environment. Speed to market is very important. Any drug that we can help a customer or a pharma company get out in the market 1 month, 2 months, 3 months sooner can help and save so many lives, and that's very important for us. We're very global. So we are a global company, looks at patients as a patient. They are all over the world, and that's what we care about. That we exist here to serve the patients across the world. This is the business we are in. So it's slightly technical in nature, but just to explain you that we are one of the very unique services providers which has capabilities in 3 major continents, Asia, Europe, and North America. And we can provide end-to-end capabilities. So we can support pharma companies end-to-end, all the way from the time they conceptualize and start thinking of a drug, very early stage discovery. And what happens, and there's a big filter. So, for a drug that you see out in the market, pharma companies must have tried 10,000, combinations of it, before it even comes out. So we help in that discovery phase where thousands of experiments are being done by our team, helping companies in Cambridge and in California and in different parts of the world on selecting and filtering those molecules to see, how they will, how they succeed and whether they succeed. We make we can help companies in preclinical, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials of these drugs as they are getting launched. And then we help the companies in commercial launches. When the drugs get commercially launched, we are part of the process to make those drugs into our US FDA approved plants. And then the drug stays on patent, we are a partner. And even when the drug goes off patent, when the prices go down significantly, our capabilities allow us, and our location allows these customers to take advantage of our global presence and have it in a lower cost area with a lower cost route. So our processes and our capabilities allow customer to stay with us for a much longer time and then take advantage of our global capabilities. We offer these services through our 13 different sites, which are located in 3 different continents, 3 in North America, 2 in Europe, and then 7 in India, and a procurement office in China. We are also the unique company where, depending on the customer, we can offer them the service from the location that they want. So this is very important. And somebody sitting in Cambridge, they've not been to India, and they say, well, I'm more comfortable with the North America side. We can offer that. There are customers in Cambridge who are very comfortable with India or Europe, and they want it there. We can offer that. So our model allows us to be very customer-centric, very customer-focused, and very integrated with customer. So we can offer them the service that they need and the location they need. We can also take advantage, because of the geography and how we build the business, take advantage of the time. So given the complexity of the business and given the complexity of the nature of the business, we can do multiple things for our customers. So pharma is a complex process. Every drug that we consume, we take, it goes through a huge cycle of manufacturing, and it goes through multiple steps which are performed in the US FDA sites across the supply chains, and that it has to go through multiple sites. So if you take a Tylenol, for example, the Tylenol consist of several different chemicals, and it may take several month process to make that one tablet, and that process goes through different sites. We have a unique capability that we have that end-to-end capability that we can offer it very seamlessly from one site to the other side. So we call it a tech transfer process, where because of our integrated capability, we can make the process much faster and much more seamless for a customer, excuse me, so they don't have to deal with different suppliers, different companies, and take the process, from one place to other. So it makes it very easy. All of our plants are US FDA approved. So in pharma, it's very important that we follow the US FDA guidelines. They have a pretty stringent process of approving the sites. All of our sites are US FDA approved, and we have one of the best record actually in the industry on US FDA. We keep hearing about US FDA record of warning letters and import alerts. In our organization, one of the unique things that we do, that quality, which is key in pharma, is not just quality's department's responsibility. We don't outsource it to the internal organization. The culture of the organization is that quality is everyone's responsibility. I, being the CEO, my number one responsibility in my business is quality. And I take it very seriously. I focus a lot on quality, even though I'm not pharma guy. I came from business background, but I understand the importance. And when I do this, everybody else does it. So every single employee, I have about 4,000 employees in my team, every single one of them has their number one goal to be a quality-centric organization. And they have measurable goals that they have to work on to make sure that we are maintaining the quality in our plants. And that is reflected in the US FDA inspections that we had. We have had several inspections where they could not find a single observation after being at our sites for several weeks. So we are very proud of what we have done, but again, it's embedded into the DNA of the organization. Important, in pharma, first of all, we talked about the value that, we are here as a trustee and we are have this trusteeship value. In pharma, there's a lot of trust that we place on the processes and the people. When we take a drug or when we go to a hospital, when we go to a doctor, they're giving us something that is going to go inside our body. And we put a trust that drug has been innovated or has been tested and has gone through a process that has been approved after a rigorous process to really for human consumption. That trust, comes with a lot of experience and a lot of, effort that we put in place. And what you see here in the middle is an example of our collaboration with our customer, that we've been part of a lot of different success stories. So as a team, we've helped our customers in 30 plus preclinical drugs, 58 phase 2 drugs, 61 phase 3. We are currently working on 10 drugs that will be launched just in the next 12 months. And we have helped companies launch 34 drugs. So that from an industry perspective, it's a pretty good track record for from an Indian company, CDMO, that is helping global companies launch these very successful drugs. Some of our drugs are multi-billion-dollar blockbusters. We have a pretty good track record in oncology in the cancer drug. That topic came up this morning. We help companies work on R&D. And, we help companies globally. So companies, large pharma companies, are working with us in India, in Europe, and in North America. I was just in India last week because one of the largest European pharma company has done some unique projects with us. And it was so successful that they actually flew in their entire team, senior leadership team, to really celebrate the success with us. It was a global thing. What we could do, nobody else could do because of the global capabilities that we have. So we put teams together and work in such a way that this company was able to work on their R&D processes by saving significant time and cost because of how we structured our organization to help them. So that's just an example of how we do. Some of the examples of companies that really the products that we have helped. These are some of the blockbuster drugs where we help companies on we are helping customers and helping companies on helping with like fungal infection, HIV. We are a big provider of HIV drugs to one of our large customer out of Europe. We've just got an approval for a new drug for HIV, where through our plants we'll be working on these drugs that will be helping millions of patients. Malaria is actually a very big disease in third world countries, and one of our customers is focused on malaria, and we make a lot of malaria drug products for them. Diabetes, actually a Boston-based company that has been working with us for about 7 years now. They are into phase 3. They are about to get a fast US FDA approval for a diabetes drug that has been done end-to-end by Piramal. They came to us about 7 years ago, and it takes that long to launch a drug, actually. So about 7 years, they worked with us in 4 or 5 different sites, and their drug is about to get launched in the next 6 to 12 months. So it's a diabetes drug. They believe that it's going to change the diabetes landscape, and it's going to help the diabetes patients significantly. Oncology, we talked about cancer. We have some of the unique cancer drugs. We are the sole provider of services to our customers on these multi-billion-dollar cancer drugs. It's one of the fastest growing pharmaceutical market. There's a huge need of innovation and drugs that can come out. A lot of cancers are still not curable, and pharma companies are spending a lot of resources in that, and we are a partner with them on helping them get these drugs out in the market as soon as they can. There's some unique capabilities that are required in this space, and we're proud to have those capabilities into our network. This is my last slide, and this is something that we are very passionate about, very focused on. The organization that we work with, or the company that I work with, we fundamentally believe that we exist to make a difference in people's life. We talked about it in the values that we talked about. We work on it internally, day in, day out, and we have a very simple theory that we exist here, to serve the patients. We exist here to make the patient successful. If my customer is successful, I succeed. So we always tell the customer, you succeed, we succeed, you don't succeed, we don't succeed. And the customer we define as actually is not the company that is sitting here in Boston or New Jersey or in New York. We actually define our customers as the patient who is waiting for the drug that is being made out by us. And if we delay that drug, or if we don't make it fast enough, or if we can do it the other way, if we can make it fast, or if we can do it cheaper, more people can benefit by the drug and more people can get cured sooner and faster. So while we are a B2B business, we work with pharma companies, but we really think ourselves as a very patient-centric organization where all the people in the organization, this actually what you see on the screen is a true org chart that we use internally. You won't find any org chart in my business which shows me at the top and everybody reporting to me. The fundamental belief is we all report to the customer. Customer is my boss. They pay for my salary, so I have to make sure that the customer is happy, and the customer will be happy if the patient is happy and the patient is cured, right? And that's the belief that we have, and that's what we work on. That's what we preach. That's what we try to educate our people, work with customers, and then deliver on those promises. So, overall, if you really look at from a business perspective, we talked about emerging economies and all that. We believe, India has a huge opportunity as an Indian company, Indian origin company. We have actually, gone the other way, where we're becoming very global in nature, serving global customers, global patients, in a global environment, not just from India, but, we've invested capital into Europe and North America as well, helping customers take an advantage of the global resource pool that we have, getting them faster, better, and cheaper medication, and ultimately serving the patients, that are looking for the drugs that we help these companies make. Be happy to answer any questions. That's all I have.
Thank you, Vivek. Any questions? I would like to get the conversation started by asking how two things have changed in the last few years. And these are sort of issues that cut across many of the presentations. One is the rising protectionism and the risk of that. And therefore, are your customers more hesitant than before to offshore anything, including something that's skill intensive like drug development? And the other is technological change. And is there any technologies on the horizon that are making the offshoring of labor-intensive services obsolete?
So I think good question on the first part. This is a knowledge-based industry, right? While there is talk of protectionism, there's talk of different things. There is no capacity to do those things in the local area. If U.S. wants to make all the drugs that are made in the world just in U.S. for U.S. consumption, we cannot make it. We don't have the know-how, we don't have the technology, we don't have the capacity in the plants, we don't have people to make it. Let's be very honest. 50% of the plants in pharmaceutical plants and the approvals are sitting in India. So how can you move this? It's a very complex process, right? You cannot do this. Secondly, there are advantages of doing things the way it happens right now, right? Cost is a big driver. We always talk about affordable medicine. We talk about these companies sometimes charging huge prices, and there's a lot of political, repercussions to that. You need to take advantage of the global talent, the global pool and the global availability of the resources that is out there, right? So we have not seen anything in the sector that we are in. Also the plants, slightly different from some other industry. US FDA governs these standards, it's sort of a gold standard. There are other agencies, MHRA for Europe, for Envisia for Latin America and all that. They all have their standards, but US FDA standards are followed by most of the countries. US FDA has a pretty robust standard. So if your standards are guided by US FDA, if you're constantly inspected by US FDA, and if you're following those guidelines, those products that come out from those countries are equally good. That happens, that you can make here, right? So we don't see, at least in my business, we haven't seen any of those protectionism, challenges. In terms of mindset, from local companies that, do I make the drug in India? Do I make it here? It's more driven by their timelines and their need for their travel and close proximity. Startups, a lot of virtual startups don't have that many people. So they're always worried, well, if I have to go to India, do I have the time? Or should I pay more money and just get it done here right now, because time, and my time is of more essence. Once you come to large pharma companies, mid-sized companies, there is absolutely no issue. I mean, I think they take advantage. And even on biotechs, I gave an example of this diabetes company that we are working with in Boston. It's going to be a very successful diabetes drug, hopefully once it gets launched. They're getting a fast-track approval, and actually they're working on a second indication that might go into hypertension. So the same drug with some minor modification can be extended into a different therapy area. And they see, and we are the only company that is working with them. So we see a mix of this. I'm not seeing this. This is a very matured industry in the sense, it's a science-driven industry. People realize the talent. People realize the controls from a US FDA approved plant perspective. So overall, we don't see any major issue. In terms of new things coming up, I think we talked about in the morning about some technology. One of the things we are seeing is this personalized medication. Some of you must have heard, but I think a lot of this is happening. People are investing where a drug will be made just for you. So people are working, there's new technologies coming and a new innovation happening where rather than a generic drug that you take out for a special therapies, there'll be a very personalized medicine that will be just made for you. So that specific drug is going to meet just your body needs and your needs. And there's a lot of innovation happening. I mean, there's a lot of other things happening, but that's when I thought, that we might see some of that coming up in future.
Hi, my name is Mohammed. I am a professor of entrepreneurship at Salem State University. I wanted to thank you for your great presentation. I would like to switch gears and ask about an interesting topic for me, and that's about your approach and potential challenges in targeting the base of the pyramid. I think you mentioned about HIV drugs, and we are familiar with cases like CIPLA, which elaborate about the challenges that they had. And could you talk a little bit about your approach in that respect?
So I think few things. You gave an example of CIPLA, for example. So they have their own drugs. We don't make our own drugs. We are a service provider. We help companies launch their drugs. So we have capabilities that we market to other companies, and we make other companies' drugs. So we work with every single brand name you can talk about, right? I don't know the specifics of that company, but if you look at our plants, and we will actually invite any one of you to visit any of our plants anytime. We are one of the best US FDA record in terms of quality and in terms of how we operate and how we work. So our standards are pretty global in nature. The standards that apply to our plant in Detroit, Michigan, or in Canada, or in Lexington, Kentucky, are the same standards that apply to our plant in any part of India or even in Europe. So in terms of our approach and how we look at this, we are location agnostic. We have a standard way of working, which is directed by US FDA. We meet the US FDA standards. We are also therapy agnostic. We are a big HIV provider because a customer came to us and we were able to help them with that process and add a lot of value. We are not an HIV expert. We just happened to be customer had the need, and then we had the capability. And we are big on oncology, for example. That's a big growth area, and our capabilities allows us to help customers on cancer drug. So we are, we are therapy agnostic. We also work on a lot of very unique orphan diseases. So orphan diseases are diseases that has a very small population in the world. And a lot of time, large companies do not take those diseases as because their business model doesn't justify that. So we have a lot of customers that work with us on these diseases where the worldwide population of the patient may be only 20,000 people, 10,000 people. We have had some cases where we have worked on some orphan diseases where it did not make business sense for us, but we had to do it because nobody else was willing to do it. And the patients actually would have suffered had we not do it. So, as part of our social responsibility, we sometimes forget the business aspect and we do some of these things. And there are some amazing videos about it that makes people cry on, once the drug went out and what happened to these kids and the patients, right? So again, coming back to it, HIV is not our core competency. Our core competency is serving the patient. We have pretty broad capabilities, and we can serve customers across those capabilities.
So with market access and reimbursement environment being so different, in terms of U.S., Europe versus emerging markets, what kind of pricing and reimbursement considerations that you offer to your clients when trying to maximize the revenue potential in emerging markets?
Good. So I think good question. So a few things. Again, and our clients is pretty broad. So we serve the innovative companies, we serve the biotechs, and we serve generic companies. And we have experience dealing with different models. We also serve with a lot of VC-based companies right outside of Cambridge, where they're struggling initially and then trying to see, how this works. So the models are very innovative. There's no one fixed model that actually works with everyone. And we are also learning and we are also growing. So this one example I gave you about this R&D Europe company that was in India last week celebrating, we came out with a very unique model that nobody else in the industry uses, which was to how to accelerate. So the way the models work is a very simple process. I go back to this circular chart I showed you. We focus on what does the customer want. And the customer wants speed. We'll come out with a model that is speed driven. If a customer wants cost, we will help them with cost. If a customer wants integration, we'll help them with integration. So a couple of examples I can give you. We have a very large customer in Europe that came to us with a drug. It was very expensive drug. Because it was expensive, their market share of that drug was very small. We have huge R&D capabilities. Our R&D people are across the world. We have about several hundred PhDs. We even have in India people sitting who had graduated from some of the best universities here, Harvard and other places. They're working with us there. What we did is we put our team in place to see how we can optimize their process and reduce the cost. We did that on our dime, right? So after some time, and pharma is a little complex process. You can come out with the best process. You have to go send for approval, and unless it's approved and registered, there's nothing you can do. So the process is a little bit long. So we did that, worked out. It took us about 2 years to implement it. After 2 years, the cost of that product or that material that we are making went down by 50%. So from a business perspective, we lost 50% of the value because we are helping a customer reduce their cost. That means our revenue goes down by 50%. But what it did, it allowed them to increase their market share significantly. So it was a small market share product. It became a bigger market share product. So per unit, we lost money, but we gained in the volume. And overall, we ended up making more money. The customer actually was successful because they gained significant market share because of our innovation and our collaboration. So we do things like that. We do things on pricing where we can give you a simple price that saves time in negotiation every time. We have done risk-based modeling where some of the VC firms in Cambridge, where they don't want to put a lot of capital in the beginning because they don't know if the outcome is going to be positive, right? So we put our skin in the game and say, you know what, we can co-invest with you. If it succeeds, you pay us a premium at the end. But if it fails, we are willing to take the hit, right? So we are very innovative in terms of pricing, helping companies because we know the pain, we know the challenges they go through. It's also a complex business model. If they're working with us, they cannot go to somebody else right away because the registration process and all those takes time. So we have different models, very focused on what the customer wants and how we can help customers succeed.
Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. My name is Christian Kilara. I'm with Suffolk University. My question has to do with the HR dimension of your business. In pharma, in general, we have two types of backgrounds. One is technical, scientific, chemistry, biochemistry, biology, and the other one is business. My question is, do you believe that people with a scientific background could use some technical skills for their professional development? And if so, what skills are those?
It's a great question because I'm a non-science person running a science-based company, so I always have this question because the science people in our company said, this is a science business, this is a science business, So I think the answer is yes. I think we all can learn and we all can evolve, if I can learn more science, and I think I'll be a better CEO if I had more science knowledge, but yes, I think the biggest skill which I tell people is understand the customer need. I think a lot of time people get fixated on what they know and what they have done their PhD in, on what they are great in, rather than listening to what the customer really wants. And we see this a lot actually happening. And we focus a lot on helping our people get better in understanding what problem is customer trying to solve. Is this a speed problem? Is it a time problem? Is it a science problem? What is the problem? Right? So, if I have to advise people, especially the technical people, help them, I want them to become more customer focused, understand the customer need, understand what the customer is really trying to ask, then offer the solution. It's more on the softer side,
Vivek, that's a great presentation. Question for you, how do you manage conflicts? You're engaged with all sorts of different people trying to many times do the same thing.
Yeah.
So how do you give assurance?
And listen, I've also learned through this process because I came from a different background, from a private equity background, and now, one of the things which is actually, this is all interesting journey, how you evolve. I also believe that, this question came up in the earlier discussion, money is just, salary is just one indicator, it's just one motivator to help people. If you can link people's job to a bigger purpose in life, I think the whole objective changes, So we have conflicts every day, actually. When I came in this morning, I was on a call, I was standing outside, resolving conflicts. And the best thing and the best way to resolve conflicts in my business is you put the customer first. You put the patient first. And you say, what is the right thing for that patient? What is the right thing for that customer? What is the right thing that will help us help the customer? Because we exist because of a customer. We are here to help the customer. And more than half of the conflicts get resolved right away. There are conflicts because of personalities. There are conflicts because of priorities. But if you put the customer first, most of the time you will find the right answer, internally within the organization, I also, internal conflicts sometimes, you put the bigger purpose within the people. So people talk about that organization is not doing this, I'm not getting that done, I'm not getting that done. And then we talk about that, by you not doing certain things, what is the impact on the patient? What is the impact on the customer? And we have a life sciences business where we can get an emotional connect with the patient, with the customer. That helps us. It works in some cases. It doesn't work in all the other businesses. We have used examples of bringing in customer to our site. So we have brought in some patients that have consumed drugs that have been made by our site, and they talk about their journey. We use a lot of videos of the products that we do, a lot of stories that we do, and then see how we can really help. But to me, if you connect with the patient, connect with the customer, I think a lot of the problems get resolved.
Vivek, thank you. That was terrific. Let's give Vivek a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.